Howdy everyone, I'm Sheriff Dakin. This is the OGS podcast, and today I'm here with Lotta, or known as YouAreNowIncognito. Hello Lotta, how you doing today?
Well, I'm doing fine. Pretty well, actually.
Alright, that's good to hear. So you've been doing a lot of work in the video game industry lately.
Yeah, I have. I worked in the industry for like 4 years, maybe five. I don't know how to count because, well, I started in the industry before I was done with school because, well, me and four friends, we started up an indie game company called Palindrome Interactive. And, well, I kind of been in the industry since.
Alright, that's cool. And you've been doing, what have you been doing there actually?
Well, I've done a lot. I mean, starting up studio is so much work. But essentially, I'm a 3D character artist. But I also worked as art director, lead artist, writer, well, chairman of the board, etc., etc. I mean, I've been everywhere. I had my fingers in everything. So,
Yes. Oh, man. Yeah, and your company is going to release, it's not out yet, but you're going to release Immortal Realms. And what I want to
yes.
ask is what inspired the aesthetic that you went for Immortal Realms?
Well, Immortal Realms is this really grim, dark, gothic vampire game. Uh, it's kind of we wanted to take the vampire stereotypes and kind of mash them together into kind of an epic experience. I don't know if it turned out so epic in the end, but it was really fun working with, and it got some really nice. What's this called? I think it got some really nice looks. We had some really great 2D artists working with it, and well, everything is nice. The sound design, the gameplay is quite neat, and so it's a turn-based strategy game. So it's kind of top down. You walk around in this world, kind of like Heroes of Might and Magic if you play that, and you go into battles and you have these turn-based battles where you fight all kinds of vampire monsters and different vampire beasts and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really
Uh,
cool.
yeah, and well, I've been part of taking developing the look of the game and vampire clans and everything, the campaign, the story. It's so much. It's kind of overwhelming.
Oh, but you worked a
Uh,
lot on it. You worked on the story,
yeah.
so does that mean you had a basically first-hand say in the main characters and what their direction
Well,
was?
I had not the first hand say everything. There was a lot of back and forth with the story, and in the start, I wasn't going to work with it at all actually, but since I like making stories so much, I kind of bumped in there, and I was like, "Hey, we could do stuff like this, and we could do stuff like that," and then I started writing down stuff, and and when I kind of run out of 3D character artist things to do, I was like, well, I could write a story, and since nobody else had time for it, they was like, well, yeah, you could. So I put really a lot of time into this, and when we actually started working with the story for real, it was the game director and the publisher and me put up the kind of outline of the story together. So we kind of wanted to make this kind of thing together, and then I refined it, the first big draft of the whole story, and then I worked with some people who are better at English than I am, to refine the text. Well, I did the storyboards, like, okay, I want this camera angle here, and I want us to tell this kind of stuff here, and I want us to reveal this thing here and this thing here, and I made all these kind of big mind maps about this is how we're going to tell the story, and this is where we tell here, and this is where we tell here. So
It sounds like you very like kind of accidentally ended up writing the story.
I
But
I don't know if it was accidentally. I mean, I wanted to do it, and I took the opportunity to do it. Um, so well, some people can see it as accidentally, but I think I just took my chance to do it. Um,
all right, and I assume it was like because you were already a 3D modeler at the time, right?
yeah, yeah, I was.
So you kind of like took on this almost second job.
Yeah, I mean, I have done this before. This is not the first time I do this.
Oh, really? You have
So
written stories previously?
yeah, we had some unannounced projects and some console projects which I have written for, and I mean, it's basically ended up being me doing stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody was really surprised when I ended up with it this time as well.
Oh, right,
And
because I forgot that you started up with like four of your college friends, and they basically
yeah,
already knew you.
yeah.
How was that, by the way, working with your friends? Is it something that you'd recommend?
Well, yes and no. It's really nice when you're friends, but when things get sour, things get sour, and then you're like, I don't know anymore. So, um, I've seen. We were a part of a game incubator. It's kind of an organization which help people start up companies and stuff like that. And I've seen so many companies fall apart because they weren't able to retrain the friendship and the work and everything like that. Some startup stories end with, well, people getting mad at each other. Other starts with, well, everything works. But um, I would totally recommend you to start up with your friends because they need to be people you trust and people you can stand hanging out with every day and working close with and sharing secrets to, and be sure they don't share any secrets outside the company which shouldn't be outside the company. Um, so, well, if you want to start up a company, do it with your friends, absolutely.
All right.
Uh,
Is sharing secrets outside the company really that big of an issue?
yeah, it can be, actually. I mean, the game industry is very small, and rumors, they spread like leap fire inside of it. So if something happens somewhere, everybody will know it.
Oh, okay.
And especially in Sweden, because the game industry in Sweden is really super small. And in the town I live in, it's like even smaller. So, I
Oh
mean,
man, do you have like this competing industry like right across the street or something?
well, no, everybody's doing so different genres in this town. So
Oh,
we have
okay.
Coffee Stain, the guys who made Goat Simulator. They're currently working on what's this called, Satisfactory. And then we have Stunlock, which make basically MOBA games. They made the game Battle Rights. Um, then we have Pieces Interactive. They make kind of this RPG stuff right now, I think. And then we have a lot of smaller companies. Some do mobile games, do like streamer-friendly games. We have one studio which started up together with PewDiePie to make like games that would look good on YouTube. Uh,
Man, I never knew that there were actually like so many kind of popular industries in Sweden.
yeah, well, Sweden, our biggest export in Sweden is video games. Actually,
Oh,
I
really?
mean,
Biggest export?
it's yeah, that's the biggest export. It's insane. I mean, we got Dice and we got Avalanche and we got THQ. We got Massive Entertainment, which is a part of Ubisoft. I mean, I can go on, but let's not. It's
Yes, that makes sense. Oh man, I want to know, getting out of university, what was the biggest shock to you that about being in kind of the real world, I guess, and starting up that company? Like, what surprised you the most?
That's an interesting question because I don't know. Um, What surprised me most was that I realized everybody is people. I mean, I always had this kind of imagination that was authorities and was like people who knew everything. And then I came out there and I realized everybody is just people, and they have their own emotions and their own lives. They go home and be with their families, and everybody has their own motivations to do things.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think that surprised me the most, that everybody's just basically people.
Huh, did you
when
used
you
to
met.
think that like people who got to like manager jobs knew like just a lot more about the industry?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And well, another thing that surprised me a lot was we're in Paris at this big conference. It was games. I can't remember it. Either Games Connect or something else. I can't
Oh, and we'll
remember.
probably
There's so
throw up on
many.
screen.
Yeah, and uh, we met a bunch of publishers there, and this was 2013 or 15, and there was like that was a time when nobody knew how to sell a game. It was really interesting because we had meetings with publishers who said like, "Oh well, we have been publishers until this time, and we always put money into game companies to make games for us, but well, we don't know how to sell them anymore, so we decided to become a service instead. So you pay us for marketing your game." And we were like, "Well, excuse us." So we should pay you for doing a job you don't know how to do. That's really no.
Wow, that's oh man. I can't believe they actually admitted it too. Like they must really not know what they're doing if they can
Yeah,
actually like they have to admit to you. Yeah,
yeah.
we can't
But it
guarantee that
was
I'll sell.
this was after the year Goats to release. So everybody was like, okay, so you can make millions and millions of dollars on one game, but if you just know how to sell it, nobody knew how to make another Goat Simulator. It was really interesting because everybody wanted to find the golden gun, and they came to the meetings. I'm like, okay, this is another simulator. We're not interested. And we sat there like we made another game at that time. It was called Aversion Sunrise. It was also a strategy game,
Hmm.
but it was set on like you crashed on a planet and were going to try to survive on the planet until the sun risen because the sun was so hot, so you die. And um, well, people came and they saw our game. I was like, well, it looks nice and everything, but it's not Goat Simulator, so no thanks.
Oh man, really big
So it
game at the
was,
time.
yeah, Goat Simulator was super big. I mean, I can't remember how much they made, but they were like making 1 million a week or something. It was insane. And I mean, I think that's the game that kind of made that studio what it is today. I mean, they didn't want to make the game. That was the most hilarious part. They did it as a game jam, but well, uh, they just they was so tired of making the game they had done at that point of Sanctum 2, and they just sat down and like, okay, let's do something entirely different, something super darky. Let's switch places. Let the programmers do graphic art and let the artists make programming, and then we do something insane. And then they made something and they put it on YouTube, and the whole internet was like, we need this game. Give us this game. And this company, it was like, okay, this is a really shitty game. It's it's made out of bugs. Should we really release this thing? And they decided to do it because it would be stupid not to do it because it was such a big everybody wanted.
Yeah.
And well, so I think they took a month or two to actually polish it up and make it into something playable. And then they just threw it out on the internet and they said, "Here, take it. It costs less than a coffee. Go and buy yourself a coffee instead because you will enjoy a coffee more than this game." And well, then they had like PewDiePie play it, and it was super big. And they just got how much money? I don't know how much money they actually got. It was insane. And then they started like milk the cash cow, so they made Goat Simulator in space, and well, I can't remember all the kind of versions they did of it.
Yeah.
But this made so they were able to kind of start up their own publishing division, and they made enough money to actually make the game they're making now, which was more of a game that they wanted to make. And they got to hire a lot of people, stuff like that. So I've talked to some other people who sits in the same science park as they did at the time, and they were like, well, I've seen these kind of game developers, they come and gone to the office every day, and like they bike to the office, and they have rocked clothes, and they look like they don't know what they're doing, and the next day they come driving in fucking Teslas, and how and spend money all over the place, and I don't know what happened. So well, it was kind of funny, and we who were just a startup at the time, we were like, wow, so this is what the game industry is. You can do anything.
Did it make you think that you could probably like release something that you didn't think was good, but that everyone else might think that this is
Well,
the best
I'm,
thing?
I'm a big skepticer, so I was like, okay, that was a one-time thing. They will not be able to achieve something like that again, probably. But well, I've seen others do it. So well, it's absolutely possible, but you should have the right kind of thing you do. We were more like, well, we want to do this epic stuff that looks good and has a lot of soul. We don't want to do Goat Simulator.
Yeah, it was just very obvious that you didn't
Yeah.
want to be known for that kind of game.
Yeah.
Oh man, which I assume. Did you kind of think like in the art direction for this game that you should purposely go away from being funny, or did you just think like, okay, this is what we're doing, we're gonna do it?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm a really quirky person. I like quirky stuff. I mean, I'm super into cartoons and stuff like that. I love when things aren't super serious. But I can't say that for my colleagues. So there was a lot of times when I kind of tried to sneak in jokes into the games, and they were like, "Nope, we should not have any jokes."
Wow, just an
And
anti-joke company.
I don't know about that. We had like a prototype for a game we made, and which I got to write the dialogue for, and I kind of wrote herp and herp, and let's do it like this. And then somebody came and, no, you can't write big killer crabs. I mean, nobody's buying that. And I was like, but I thought it was funny. But I mean, if you read what I write, you realize that I like jokes. I like doing silly faces on my characters. Just, I mean, I think it's very obvious in the comics I write that, well, I like to express things with silly faces, silly expressions.
Yes, that's something that I was very surprised by, because when I first saw your work, it was all like just very serious stuff.
Yeah.
And then I saw your page, and it's just filled with like all these little jokes. So I was like, oh, this is neat, man. Oh.
But I don't know. I think it's easier to reach out to people if things are a little bit funny, because it's easy to relate to funny.
Yeah, it's much harder to relate to things that are serious, mostly because I don't think most people want to. Like, life is serious enough.
Yeah.
Oh. Moving on to one of your personal projects, I see you're currently doing this. I forgot what it counts for. Oh, Delmar's storyline, and you're making a comic
Yeah,
of it.
Yeah.
This is
I mean, I wasn't to make a comic out of it. This started when I was in the university, and we were just starting up the company, and we were talking about, okay, what kind of games do we want to do? And the CEO came up with this idea for Aversion Sunrise, which was the first game project we worked on. And I had this idea that, well, I kind of want to do this thing where people shapeshift into big dragons, animals, and stuff like that, and you could make kind of a gameplay thing out of it. And we ended up doing his idea because it seemed easier, and my idea was just too big for us. I mean, we were 5 people, and I wanted like 4 models for each character. But I couldn't let go of the idea, so I started to draw some characters instead, and I was like, oh, I could expand on this idea. And then I was thinking, oh, I could write a comic up, because I mean, I have always have some comic projects going through school, and during the university I didn't. And I started doing some sketches, and I did this Dahmer character, and I thought it was really fun to draw. And he seemed like he had an interesting personality, so I started doing a comic, which actually was the script for the second chapter, but with a lot less information. And I looked at it and I was like, no, this is too much work. I don't have time for this. let's just put it over there and forget about it. And then I continued to draw the characters because, well, I'm like stupid sometimes. And every time I draw a picture, I think, oh, this is interesting. What's the story behind this picture? Who is this character I'm drawing? What is his story? What is his background? What can I make out of this? So then I sat down. I think I was sick or something. I should absolutely draw. I should absolutely write something. I should write like a small 1-page chapter about this character and the other characters I had done so far. So at this time, I was super into wolf community at the internet. So I drew a lot of wolves. I sold adoptable, and I took commissions for it and things like that. And all the characters were wolves at the time, and I was like, they can be any animal, but it's just wolves right now. But I kind of made a thing out of this, and I made this chapter, and I was pretty intrigued by it because the main character was so interesting, I thought. And so I started to write some other things about him. Like I made a refined version of the old comic script I did, so that was the second chapter. And I thought it was really interesting to write something out of the perspective of the villain. But well, he kind of turned out into a anti-hero in the end. But in the start, I was really aiming for writing out of the perspective of villain. And I had this idea that, okay, let's write 20 chapters about this guy and end it there. And it should start with him being a villain. It should end with him being a villain, thrown into prison, and then executed. That's a good story. But then kind of my sister came along, and she looked at the things I wrote, and she was like, oh, this is interesting. I could do a character. So she started to ask all these kind of things. Well, how does this world work? What's their society like? What kind of animal can you be? How can you stretch the rules? She's like this kind of person that when she plays a role-playing game, she wants to make the weirdest thing she can. She wants to find a rule in the rule book, and she just wants to make it super quirky, and or she just wants to break it to make something awesome out of it. So she asked me all these questions, and she didn't want to tell me what kind of character she would make. And well, after a while, then finally she showed it to me, and she had been asking like, okay, how big animal can it be? Does it have to be a big animal? And I was like, well, they are basically demons who is squished down into an animal body, so there should be some limit to it. I mean, you shouldn't be smaller than a rat. And then she was, oh damn. And I was like, so you're planning on doing something really small? Yeah, I was planning on doing. And I was like, okay, but you can make the animal a bit bigger if you really want that kind of animal. She was like, yay, and then she disappeared. And then
she just
then
up and disappeared like that?
No, she disappeared for some days, and then she came back to me, and she was, here, I made this character for you. And this was a character called Shrapnel. He was a super tall human, and his animal was a scorpion. And I was like, no. Why is he a scorpion? I mean, yeah, but he's a really big scorpion. And I was like, okay, he's the right size. He's bigger than a rat. And I was like, okay, I trust you. You can make great things out of, I don't know, anything. So then she started to write about this character in the same world, and she started to. And we talked a lot about the narrative and what we wanted to do with it. And my boyfriend, he helped me take kind of make a villain for it. He said, like, you have no villain in the story. You need a real villain. I was okay. So he helped me create Wilfred's, the antagonist character. He's this what's his oh, I can't remember at the moment. I'm sorry. I should know this. This is embarrassing. It's okay now. Oh, damn it.
It really sounds like you just live in some weird bastion of creative people where everyone around you is like, no, you can do this.
Yeah, okay, so my sister, she went game writing. My boyfriend, he went game writing, studying animation right now. I mean, I'm living in this society with just game developers, so everybody has done everything all the time.
Oh my god, I want to move to your city now. Like, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a jackal. That's the name of it.
Oh, a jackal. Yeah.
Yeah. And well, so he wanted to make this kind of insane character, and I was like, okay, let's do an insane character. And then we kind of just continued to write, and well, I had no idea this project would become so big. I mean, I've written 84 chapters. Now I actually written 87 chapters on this Thelma storyline. I've written so much other storylines.
Oh, so. There's quite a bit of this storyline. It's
yes, it is really. And
how long have you been working on it, by the way?
Well, I worked on it just as long as I've been working on my company, so 4 years or something like that.
Oh, you're right. Because it started out as like the idea that people didn't go with.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, well, let's do something else with it.
I find that very odd because it's like they didn't go with your idea, but you still made it almost pretty much as large as the game itself.
Yeah.
Even though it won't get featured at 8.3 or anything.
Yeah, I think I made it larger actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I was aiming for like a battle arena or something, and now it's a super large story with so many storylines.
Oh my god.
But it's fun to work with. It's really fun to work with. And it's so fun when people actually read it. I mean, I had this guy this month, I think, who just read everything from start to finish. And I see every time he or she favorites the episode. And this person had favorites every single episode they had read. So I'm just so amazed somebody actually takes the time to read this, because it takes so long time to read it. It's like a book. So
yeah, it really is.
And then when people actually leave a comment, that's super nice as well, because or they have theories about the story. I had this character which I said all the time, he's dead, and then I started to go, but is he really dead? you can't really know. There's a person here who claims to be this person. And then I was like, he's dead, this is another person. And I had some readers who just went wild. You can't do this! I was so sure he was alive and I really wanted the main character to meet his father, but his father is dead and I don't know what to do anymore.
Oh.
So,
Do people often get upset with you about your decisions of this element shifter storyline?
well, they don't often get upset, but I sometimes get I feel tricked. I didn't think this would be how things went down.
Mm-hmm.
So, I really like to keep secrets about the characters and then piece by piece giving them information about what is really happening behind the scenes, who this person really is, and stuff like that. And sometimes I give the reader information that characters don't have. Like the main character, he had a father, and I state this super early. Like this character is the main character's father, but the main character doesn't learn this until way later. So, but I think that's also very interesting because that means the reader has information the characters don't, and they can see how they react to the information they got. They know how they should react if they had the information. I don't know how to explain it. I think it's fun anyway.
This is... Yeah, I get it. It makes sense. It's like,
Yeah.
you know something that they don't know, but then they make actions like, no, don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh man, if you only knew how important this was, you wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. Let's see. I also noticed that some of the chapters aren't written by you. Some of them are written by your sister Jenny.
Yeah, exactly.
And some of them by some other people. I can't remember their names right at this moment. Oh, is this kind of freeform thing where a lot of people contribute?
Yeah, exactly. So when I created this species, this universe, I said this is open species. Anyone can make a character in this world. Anyone can write something. But if you want the story to be canon, then you need my approval for it first. So we had some people who wrote stuff that didn't get approved because it didn't stick to the canon lore.
Mm-hmm.
And some chapters were approved. And there are some people who just make characters and then left it at there. And I would actually like to make a bigger community out of it, but I really didn't have the time. So I've been working on the company and everything like that. So
Yeah,
and then I started
sense.
to draw comics again. That takes a long time.
Oh yeah, Delmar Storyline, the comic series, which you drew 3 chapters, is it now?
Yeah, I'm at third chapter, and I'm always telling myself I should only draw this chapter and then I should only draw this chapter and then I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know if I can end it. But I can't draw the whole thing as comic because then I would have to work the rest of my life.
Let's see. Honestly, the track you're going, I feel like you might end up doing that. Because it's always something like, oh man, I should stop after this one. It would be ridiculous to do another one.
Yeah.
But then you still end up doing the other one.
Yeah. But, well, I made the first chapter because I wanted to try out how 3D and 2D together into a comic and see if I could make a better and faster result of it.
Yeah.
And then I realized I got a lot more traction to my page, the actual story, because people read the first chapter and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Let's read the rest. There's a lot of text. When you put out the text on the internet, there's so many people who read it because it takes time to read the text and it's harder than to read a comic if you know.
Yeah.
That's also something we realized a lot when we made games, that nobody likes text, nobody reads text. People like, oh, okay, somebody's saying something. Okay, skip, let's play instead.
Oh, is that something you would experience as you were like play testing your game?
Yeah, I mean, I do it as well. So,
I would
I
feel
mean,
awkward doing that because I would assume that the person making the game is like right behind you, and it's like, yeah, I'm just gonna skip past all this content you made.
but it's so usual. I mean, everybody knows it that nobody likes to read text. That's also one of the things one of our mentors told us. When we actually got an investor into the company, we also got a mentor who
Mhm.
had worked as a game director and lead artist and stuff like that. And he told us nobody reads text. Don't bother making too much text because if it's longer than 5 sentences, then nobody's going to read it. And this turned out to be true because people don't read it. Um, but then at the same time, I think it's very fun when we see people who are playing the game on YouTube now and actually read the texts, and I'm like, yay! Somebody's reading what I'm writing. But when we had like playtest, we saw how people were just skip, 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 skip.
Oh,
And it's very different from person to person as well. Uh, but anyway, back to the comic.
oh right, I completely
I
forgot.
realized people started to actually read what I was writing when I did the comic, and then I wanted to continue. And well, the second chapter, that's the first chapter. It's just in the forest, so there's only animals, and I mean, it's just a bunch of wolves who interact basically. So I thought, well, the second chapter is more interesting because then we will actually see a little bit more of the world, and we will see the cyberpunk city, and see how he actually shapeshifts, and a little more interaction with one of the other main protagonists, Reed. So I kind of wanted to do that as well. And since, well, the first thing I did of the story was the manuscript for the second chapter, so I thought that it was a fun thing to do to see and compare with the first manuscripts to the actual finished product. What would it look like if I did it like 3 years later? So I did that as well. And then when I was finished with that, I was like, I can't just stop now. I mean, it was so fun to make comics again. And then I was like, but in the third chapter, you actually get to see the demon forms. So you get like one chapter of the animals and one chapter with the humans, and then you get one chapter with the big dragons fighting. This is great. So let's do that as well. And well, that's where I'm currently at.
Yeah.
But for the third chapter, I actually decided that I don't want to draw all these big dragons. I'm making them in 3D instead, and then I'm rigging them and making them basically into game characters, so I can just pose them and then use technical things to make them look drawn. And well, I had some people saying it looks fantastic and wow, how can you make these pages so quick and they look amazing? And then I had people telling me that it doesn't look good at all. Please just draw the characters. So
Oh, do you think people feel that it's better to have it drawn, like regardless of the outcome? Like, no, you should draw it.
I think there's a problem with 3D, and you can see it kind of in 3D cartoons as well. That things get a little bit stiffer than
Mhm.
if you actually draw them. And one thing that was hard to do with 3D models was making the expression I want to make. I mean, these kind of demons, I want them to look like lifeless demons, like they have no personality. So I thought it was good to make them like this. But at the same time, it's kind of not appealing when they don't have an expression. Um, so, well, I don't know. I'm happy with my decision to make them in 3D because it saves a lot of time. Um, and I don't know if I could make this comic, the third chapter, if I hadn't made it in 3D because it would take so much time. Um, And I learned a lot about rigging as well, because that's not something I've done a lot of, because we had like an animator doing the rigs, the models. So I actually learned to make my own rigs properly. I mean, I know how to make basic joints and posing and like that, but making actual controls for the leg, so I haven't done so much that before. So it was really fun to learn how to do that, but it took very long time to actually set it up and make it work and everything like that.
I assume it was made longer by the fact that you were still learning a lot of it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh man, you do so much stuff that I want to know. Is there anything that like pushes you to do all this stuff? Because it's really
I
hard
want to
to
be the
imagine.
best. No, no, I don't know. I am a competition person. I actually am, but I
Oh,
hate
okay.
losing, so I don't participate in any competitions.
Okay, so you're just here competing on the internet where there are technically no losers.
Yeah, exactly.
We
But
know who they are, but they're not technically losers.
um, but well, I really like to see other people do stuff, and I'm like, can I make something like that? I should be able to make something like. Um, so I really like trying things out and see if I can make something myself. Um, I think that's what drives me the most, actually.
Hmm. Yeah, it keeps you really nice and motivated. Would you say that you're
Yeah.
like more motivated than people?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that actually.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I kind of get obsessive over things. Like, oh, I really must do this thing, and then I sit up all night, and I have this rule for myself that I must be in bed at 12 o'clock because I need to go to work tomorrow, and that makes a deadline for myself that I must finish this picture before this time, so it's out on the internet and see if people like it or not. Um,
Oh, is there any like real scheduling to your days at all?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we work 8 hours a day, and we have like half an hour which we can choose to work in the morning or in the evening. But it's always 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have so much time in the evenings because I mean I should go home from work and I should start making dinner and then I should eat dinner and feed my cats and then finally I can sit down and actually draw. That's I have like a an window of 4 hours in the evening. So most of my works are made within 4 hours, actually.
Wow, within 4 hours.
Yeah.
That's really
Well,
impressive.
it kind of depends, though. I mean, the comics take longer. Most comic pages, I just sit down and I say, okay, I start Friday evening and I publish Sunday evening, and
All
I
right.
need to make the whole page in this time.
You work 8 hours a day. Does that include weekends too?
Uh, when I work on personal project, I have no time limits on myself. I just work when I feel for it. And when
Mm-hmm.
I get started, I can sit for 12 hours and just work on something. So I mean, I don't know if it's super healthy, but I like doing it. Um, and well, when you make 3D, you can't make things within 4 hours because it takes much more time than that. I sent you this kind of realistic head. Uh, I've been making it for my portfolio. There's a company I really would like to work with who makes video game trailers,
Mm-hmm.
and they are looking for like a face modeler. So I've been kind of trying to learn how to make faces out of scan data. So this is I purchased like a 3D model of scanned person. It was super cluttery, cluttered in the start. It was like polygons everywhere, so I had to take it into ZBrush and clean it up. And I made some changes to her nose as well because she had like a convex nose instead of a concave, and I like the concave nose better, so I kind of changed that. And then I had to find some other scan data with like pores and everything like that, and the face texture. So I've been working on this model for a lot of hours, and it's still not done. I mean, I have the hair left, and I have like facial hairs, and I don't think her eyebrows looks very good yet. And her eyes don't look super realistic yet. So there's a lot of things left to do on it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like you look at your stuff a lot more critically than others might look at it, because I feel like a lot of people, probably below your skill level, would look at it and say, "Hey, that looks good. Let's move on to hair."
Yeah. I mean, I can be like that as well sometimes. I'm like, okay, it looks good enough. Let's move on, and then I come back to something a week later. I'm like, it looks so terrible. How could I ever? No, it's so ugly. This is so no. Please take it away. I need to remove it, delete it, or anything.
Oh.
So that's a really big difference between me and the other artists who started the company. Because he's a perfectionist. I mean, he can sit on an image for hours and hours and just like render things. So he just like so should draw a little bit more on the armor here, a little bit more on the skin here, and a little magic here. And I mean, he can sit with one image for 2 weeks, and after 1 week, it looks finished to me, and he week, and I can barely see the difference. It looks better, and I'm like, yeah, keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, but
um,
when it comes to the game industry, like you were one of the 3D modelers and concept artists,
yeah.
what really decides whether you can make it in the gaming industry?
Oh wow, that's just a question of how determined you are.
Let's see. Oh, how determined? So it's
Yeah,
like if you have the drive, you're going to make it?
yeah, yeah, exactly. So nobody's gonna give you a job in this industry. You have to earn it, kind of. You have to prove yourself constantly. You have to look. You have to kind of find the jobs that would fit you. You have to take contact with people and kind of like, here's my stuff. Look at my stuff. Uh, Things like that. It's a super hard industry to be in, and I mean both on a level that a lot of companies have really bad um, working policies. I mean, there's crunching. That means that you can work for free over time for hours and hours. I mean, some of the biggest game companies have had a lot of um, criticism for this. I mean, there are some people who worked. I can't remember the numbers, but like for Red Dead Redemption, there was many people crunched so much, and there's like this kind of culture in some companies that you're expected to work for free over time because everybody else is doing it. That is something the game industry really needs to change because at average a person works for average 3 years in the game industry and then they are so tired they can't go to work anymore, so they have to kind of go to the doctor and say I can't work anymore, and then they are suspended for a year and then maybe they can come back.
Interesting. Did you work a lot
Yeah.
of overtime at your company?
We have had not too much crunches, I think. We had some crunches.
Hmm.
And there was one time I had to like say that okay, we can't work for 2 weeks without a break because that's in the law. You can't do that.
Hmm.
Um, and well, I had some sore faces when I said that, but I was like, trust me, we don't want to do that. And then when they came, when people actually got to go home, they were like, I'm gonna sleep the whole day. So in the end, everybody was happy. Um,
Yeah, that's good. Nice
but
happy endings.
yeah, but I think the largest problem is that you don't get paid for these periods, and you kind of need to do it anyway because then there's the risk of getting fired, and that's really bad.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but there's a lot of initiatives now, mostly from say like Game Workers Unite and stuff like that, because they had a lot of scandals with game industry, game companies just closing down. There was Telltales, for example. When they shut down, the bosses came out to everyone employed there and said, "Well, we're closing this company. You have half an hour to take the stuff from your computers, and then you should be out of here. We're sorry this happened." And there was like a lot of people suddenly unemployed, and they didn't know what to do, and their health insurance just vanished like that because it was tied to their job,
Right.
and it was their whole family's life insurance as well, um, went with it because they had that through the job. And luckily there was a lot of people reaching out to these ex-employed at Telltales, and most of them managed to get new jobs. But it was such a dark day for the game industry that something like this happened.
Yeah, it's
And
just really
it's
unfortunate that these
yeah,
big companies just do this, apparently.
yeah, exactly. And it's not the first time it's happened. It's not the last time either. I mean, we had one company in this town right now where had to let 15 people go just like that because they didn't afford to have them around anymore because they were making a new game and their positions weren't needed anymore. There's really no perfect security in the industry, and that's the scary thing about it, I think.
Yeah, I know that's also really common along a lot of art industries, but
Yeah,
particularly in the game industry.
yeah.
Okay, right. So, how much did this kind of culture affect your company? Because from what I hear, your company was, fairly fun to work at, but there were some crunches.
Yeah, well, I think the largest part how it affected us was the discord between the owners about how to how to kind of um, what we should think about it. I mean, there's a discord between everyone in this industry about how things should work. Some people love crunches, and some people think we really shouldn't have it. And well, the way it affected us the most, I think, it was asking ourselves the questions: How do we want it here? Um, so, I mean, some people they love crunches, even at our company. We have people it's like, oh, I could sit over this day and do this thing for 3 hours. When you come in tomorrow, it's gonna be perfect. And then we have people when the time runs out, they like, kind of like, okay, now I'm done here. Now I go home. Um. So
Oh,
well,
would you say like how early you leave is kind of affecting how employers view you in this industry?
well, no, I, I don't want to think that either way. Um. I think it all comes down to how well you yourself are actually during the workouts, how well you yourself is actually performing. That's the word I'm looking for. um, because if you work overtime a lot, you get tired and you don't sleep enough. You perform better at normal times. So, I mean, some of us we really try to tell people, okay, it's time for you to go. You need to go home and you need to. We had when we were a really new company, or before we started the company, it was a group, kind of big group of people, students who wanted to make games together, and we had this designer who he would sit up like the whole night at the office. And we went home like 5 o'clock, and he came back and he sat there at the computer, and he like his eyes were red. And he looked tired, and there was like cups of coffee standing on the table. And it was like, I haven't figured this out. I don't know how to solve this problem. We're like, dude, have you been here the whole night? Yeah, yeah, I had to sit really still because there was like this risk of the alarm going off, and I don't know how to shut it off. So I've been sitting here really still, and we were like, go home, please. He was like, yeah, I think I need to sleep.
Wow, so there are people that are just they're just staying
Yeah,
there, I guess.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny. There was another company who was a startup. I mean, there was a lot of startups, so I had a lot of really stupid stories about startups. But we had like this really awful house to start up in the game incubator. They put all the new companies in this kind of improvised building. We called it the shoebox, and um, you got to sit there until you proved yourself, and then you could move up into the real house.
Oh,
So
okay.
this startup company that were making a MOBA game, and well, for some reason the alarm set off every night in this building, and everybody was really confused because there wasn't supposed to be anyone there at night, and it was always on the third level where this company was. Then after a while, people started to realize, well, that person, he's always here first in the morning. He always leave last.
Hmm.
And then people started to realize this person was sleeping at the office because he had no home.
He had no home?
He had no home. So he had stopped paying his rent because he couldn't afford his rent. So he started to sleep in the office instead because it was free and he could just stay there for the night. And
Wow.
nobody realized, well, except that he sometimes set off the alarm when he went up to go to the bathroom in the night. And that was when the incubator came in and said, you can't sleep at the office. That's a big no-no. And if you don't have a home, then you get some help because you can't sleep at an office. There's rules for this, and you can't have an office like a living place. That's in the Swedish law. You can't do that. And well, I don't think that guy was left at that company very long after that. I think they actually kicked him out because
It sounds like he just had problems outside of work, man.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So, well, that happened.
Yeah, I just find it crazy that there are people. Well, obviously, that guy, he had a reason. Like, he wasn't gonna just stay wandering out at 4 a.m. or anything.
No.
Um, but people that just optionally stay until when there are supposed to be no one here, that they set alarms off.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah.
And I assume
I
they
mean,
can hear the alarm too, right?
yeah, it's super loud. I accidentally set it off one time. I don't remember what I was supposed to do. I was going to get something, and then I accidentally set it off, and I was like, shit, what do I do now? And it was super loud. I really hurt my ears. And I was like, okay, I have this code inside the office, so I can call the security firm. And I went in there and I called them, and the girl who answered, she was like, I'm sorry, but you need to get out of the building because we can't listen to the alarm because it hurts my ears. And I was like, but I just need the number so we can shut it off. And she was like, I'm hanging up now. And I was like, no. And the problem is that if this alarm is active for too long, then somebody has to go out to check it from the security firm, and that costs money for the company who has the building.
Mhm.
And since this guy was sleeping there and set it off every night, they spent a lot of money on this. So they were really angry with everyone who set it off after that because it cost so much money. And I was like,
Mhm.
I really, I really need to put it off before this happens, and then they're gonna all be mad at me.
Oh man, did you
So
actually end up getting it off, or?
no, I actually managed to get the number and run out of the building, and then I called. Was this super nice guy who answered instead? And he was like, "Oh, that can happen to anyone. Let's just take this number and put it in, and then everything's fine." But yeah.
Oh, that's
I
good
mean,
to
the
hear
first.
because it sounds like you could have gotten fired at that point. Like, it's
No, no, I didn't get fired for something like that. I mean, everybody set off the alarm at some point.
oh really?
But it was just a question of managing to call the right number and telling them the right number in time.
Hmm.
um,
Oh, but
yeah,
the industry that you work in, is it a hard industry to get into, or is it
yeah,
really easy? Oh
yeah.
no.
It's a hard industry. Yeah, yeah, it is.
Let's see. What would you say are the best, I don't know, precursors to getting in that industry?
Get an education, actually.
Oh,
I
really?
think that's really. Yeah, I think that's really good. Uh, I think. Well, it's a bit different from country to country. I mean, in Sweden, all education is free, so you can take an
Oh, right.
education at any point when you want in your life, and you don't have to pay for it. So, but in like the United States, you have to pay for it. So then there's a lot more. You have to be sure to what you're paying money to learn.
Hmm.
Um, but the good thing about education is that you meet other people, and you meet people who can potentially give you jobs, and um, you get motivations to actually learn things that can be really hard to on your own sit down and actually motivate yourself to do something. Um, I know that there's a lot of really good self-learned people out there, but I think did my computer shut off,
Oh
or
no,
did
you're still
my
here.
no? Yeah, good. It's my graphic card who does weird things.
Oh, all right.
Hmm, interesting. Both my screens just shut up and became black. I don't know what's happening.
Let's see. You can still hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you, so
Oh,
that's not a
okay.
problem. But I think I know what happened. My computer went to sleep or something like that because I haven't done anything for a while. I
Oh,
think
okay.
that's a problem. I hate when both screen just goes black because that usually means that something crashed and everything is shutting down and you're losing hours of work because you're stupid and can't remember to save the things you're making. It was so horrible. There was this time I was streaming. I was drawing a page of the comic, and I came to a point where the program said you can't have any more layers, and then it just shut down. And I sat there and like, this was on stream, live stream as well. Like, and I was like, okay, I'm sorry guys, but I think I have to quit now because it crashed and I haven't saved for the entire time of this stream, so everything is gone and I have to start over. um, so yeah, that
Oh,
was kind of embarrassing. Always remember to save your work.
Yes, always remember to save your work.
Yeah.
Oh, but okay, we're also coming up on time now. So for our last
Yeah.
final question, just for our audience at home, because most of our audience is probably like beginning artists, people who are starting out wanting to get into the industry that you're into. I just for them, what would you recommend that they do to like train for a position in the video game industry?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. Um, it kind of depends on what part of the game industry they want to get into. I mean, I have this saying that anyone could do something at a game. I mean, there are so much things that needs to be made for a game. I mean, there's like architecture, there's characters, there's music, there's gameplay, there's narration, there's everything,
Oh yeah.
even photography. I mean, anyone could do anything. Anyone could do something for a game. So I think the first part is to point down what is it you want to do, and then try to find a way to get there. Um,
Okay, so it's like first step, know what you want to do, and then
yeah,
secondly,
exactly.
plan from there.
Yeah, and I mean, some people they start with like going to a graphic artist's education, and then they turn up doing something entirely else when they actually work. But I mean, that's just how life is. So, but I think having clear goals for where you want to go is good, because then you know what you have to practice on to get there.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, Incognito, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. It was super fun.
Uh, let's see. And is there anything you would like to plug before we sign off here?
Like I usually like I have like my motto on my DeviantArt page. It's like follow your dreams. It's kind of what I live for. I mean, I have this dream. I want to do this, and then I just bash into it and I do it because I mean we only live once. Let's do what we like to do.